Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. You know, one thing we don't talk about in America is class war. Other countries suffer from class war, like Great Britain is a prime example. But in America, typically, no. Except now, yes. Stacy.
Well, Max, we are here from our perch in Paris, where we are studying the history of the brioche and let them eat brioche, correct? Well, it's all over the news. You know, you and I have been covering that for over 12 years now on Keiser Report about the two-tier justice system, the two-tier monetary system where we have that interest rate apartheid. Now we have that social credit score, which we predicted here on Keiser Report would happen in the United States when we first heard about it in China. And we already saw the indications happening 2 years later in 2016 that there was this effort to deplatform deplorable people. Well, we now have a social credit score two-tier system and evidenced in Facebook. Facebook says its rules apply to all company documents reveal a secret elite that is exempt. Mark Zuckerberg has publicly said that Facebook allows its more than 3 billion users to speak on equal footing with the elites of politics, culture, and journalism, and that its standards of behavior apply to everyone, no matter their status or fame. In private, the company has built a system that has exempted high-profile users for some or all of its rules, according to company documents which were leaked to the Wall Street Journal.
Yep, it took about 250 years to return to an elitist Uber class that rules over the peasants. And we have a permanent peasant class now in America. And we see the Met Gala and AOC dressed up in her Marie Antoinette best, with a dress that says, "Eat the rich." Of course, that would be her. And mocking the peasants that she rules over now, as well as all the others in the ruling class. And it's getting dicey out there. It's getting chippy. You know, people are getting a little unnerved by the fact that they've been relegated to a permanent underclass through money printing and corruption.
The average population has noticed this. They've seen this trend. And the gaslighting has been real. The gaslighting has been that the elite always say, there is no such thing. If you just follow the rules, the terms of service, you're fine. We won't deplatform you. We won't memory hole you. And what these documents show that, in fact, the elite, the famous, the rich, the powerful, do have a separate tier of justice on the social media networks. They are not deplatformed. They are not memory holed, and they are not exiled. A few of them, like Trump, are, but the documents actually show that Trump was given way more leeway than the ordinary person who would be deplatformed from these programs. The program, known as XCheck or XCheck, was initially intended as a quality control measure for actions taken against high-profile accounts, including celebrities, politicians, and journalists. Today, it shields millions of VIP users from the company's normal enforcement process, the documents show. Some users are white-listed, rendered immune from enforcement actions, while others are allowed to post rule-violating material pending Facebook employee reviews that often never come.
Class war. Classic class war situation. Bitcoin is the currency of resistance.
Yeah, because a guillotine is the only solution, and Bitcoin is a guillotine.
Well stated. It doesn't decapitate so much as decapitalize.
That's right. So they're immune from enforcement action. Remember when you and I confronted Eric Holder on that flight from Raleigh to Washington, D.C. about his deferred prosecution agreements for some, like the HSBC bankers who got fined like $1 billion, but escaped jail for laundering tens of billions of dollars for the Mexican drug cartel. If an ordinary schmuck American is found with even $1,000 worth of drug money, laundering money for any drug cartel, they would have all of their assets seized and thrown into prison for at least a decade. But again, there's a two-tier system wherever you look. It's no wonder we see a fractal of the corruption. Everywhere you look is corruption all the way down in the same sort of manner.
Right, you know, we reported on Wachovia, multi-$100 billion money laundering for Mexican drug cartels, now bought out by Wells Fargo. Report on Jamie Dimon over there at JP Morgan, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars worth of fines for essentially committing financial fraud. And it's been replete in the financial sector. And people say, well, there's nobody getting injured. It's a victimless crime when Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger commit fraud. But this is what happens, is that it sends a green light to all corporations to mimic what happens in the Wall Street banks by simply ignoring the rule of law and making the Constitution pay to play. So it's freedom of speech. It's freedom of speech as a service. You have to pay up for freedom of speech, is what they're saying over there at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. So, the joke's on America, though, because the status of the United States around the world now, I can't imagine it ever being lower, where you have the Taliban openly mocking the U.S. in Kabul. You jerks, you left $85 billion worth of hardware here. Well, that's 165,000 rate of return based on, going back to the 9/11 cost of about $500,000.
In fact, you have Americans in prison still to this day for sending socks to people in Afghanistan. Imagine leaving 15, fighter jets, 100 helicopters, attack helicopters. Nobody gets in trouble for that. Again, the two-tier system. And I just think, we're in the home of the place where that was tried before. It failed. Maybe this time it's going to be different. Maybe you could do it differently this time, and there's not going to be any sort of consequence to it. You mentioned the UK. Remember a few years ago, I think it was 2011, when during the last bout of inflation, the post-2008 financial crisis, where all the bankers got bailed out for all of their crimes, the crime wave that caused that financial crisis. And then there were riots in the UK. Remember that? And what did the Prime Minister say, David Cameron? If you're old enough to do the crime, you're old enough to do the time. And that's what he said for those teenagers that were getting thrown into prison for months on end because they stole some sneakers or a pair of trousers on the ground from a looted shop. Well, our economy has been looted, right? Through intention, but also consequence of the actions of a debt-based system, right? It's a natural looting, private equity sort of business model that inevitably emerges, and there's looting all around, and there's just stuff to be picked up. Only some people get to pick up the free goods on the ground that are thrown there by the institutions, by the elite, by the politicians who trash the economy. Is lying there on the ground. If you, normal, deplorable person, try to pick any of that brioche up, you'll be sent to prison or deplatformed or memory hold, where the elite obviously get to get away with it.
The housing market was trashed because of financial fraud by Wall Street banks, and guess who bought up all the houses for pennies on the dollar? Warren Buffett over there at Berkshire Hathaway. Part of the crime, and then benefiting not only by immunity from the crime, but then buying assets for pennies on the dollar as a result of his own criminality, as well as the other Wall Street banks. So it's really a virtuous circle of crime. The UK, of course, has set the standard for a class war and pilfering the poor through elitism. But the US, we had a Revolutionary War to get away from that. Sadly, we're pretty much giving away everything at this point.
So you could see the two-tier system coming in. They're projecting what they're really understanding, what these CBDCs, as Keiser Report has pointed out, these central bank digital currencies, they see a new, harder, better money, Bitcoin, right? And like a cargo cult, they want to mimic our currency is also digital. It's also online, right? And therefore, it's as good as Bitcoin. No, it's not. That's how the central bank system is fiat on top of gold. Remember, they had gold for a long time, thousands of years, and then they said, hey, we're going to have something as good as gold, but it's easier, more transportable, all these things, and we could bail you out. Well, now Bitcoin comes along, and now they're introducing CBDCs. This is what ECB's Jans Wedman says. Central banks planning to issue digital versions of their currencies must not treat commercial financial institutions as endangered species that can't handle competition. And the headline from Bloomberg reads, ECB's Jens Wedman says banks shouldn't be cosseted in digital money plans, which means they will be cosseted because it's a cosseted class. We're telling you about this two-tier system, like hearkening back to the pre-French Revolution.
Right. The other way to look at that is what Simon Dixon of Bank of the Future warned us about at least 3 years ago, that the central bank digital currencies, once implemented by the central banks, allowed them to throw the commercial banks, the Wall Street banks, under the bus. And it looks like, based on that statement, they're softening things up because they're going to cut them off. So Jamie Dimon, the last laugh, Jamie Dimon's going to be disenfranchised. Jamie Dimon's going to be cut off from the central banking system. He's going to be buying Bitcoin as a lifesaver.
It could happen in the U.S., but in the ECB, they're offering 3 different options: indirect CBDC, direct CBDC, or hybrid CBDC. The direct CBDC would be from the central bank to the individuals out there, the deplorable people. The indirect CBDC is probably the one they're going to take. That is from the central bank to the commercial banks, who then get to distribute it. So they get their cut. And we'll see what emerges. But I reckon the US might get a direct CBDC. And Europe will probably have the indirect CBDC, right?
Right. Well, they totally missed the point of Bitcoin. They don't compete with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is decentralized, it's non-hierarchical, and it is unconfiscatable. This is just a recreation of the current corrupt system. It gives them a way to introduce actually worse policies than they already have in the form of negative interest rates, negative savings rates, and money that has an expiration date. Spend the money now, or in 6 months it becomes worthless. It's just empowering the kleptocracy and the kakistocracy with new financial tools to actually engage in more pilfering.
Just like what Facebook does, that there's a special rules for the elite. They get to break the rules. The same thing will happen with CBDCs. The elite will continue to be able to break the rules. You, ordinary Joe Bag of Donuts, if you try to send 10 euros to a friend, they'll want all sorts of swabs from you and QR codes and know all about you, right? Well, and finally, in terms of hyper-Bitcoinization and a response to this, El Salvador's Bitcoin adoption to cut Western Union revenue, increase population wealth. El Salvador's Bitcoin adoption will increase the wealth of its people while diminishing the commission fees paid out to intermediaries, CNBC reported. President Nayib Bukele estimates that companies like Western Union and MoneyGram will lose about $400 million a year in remittance fees due to the country's Bitcoin adoption.
They're the new Blockbuster or Kodak of this financial era. And it's a clean break. It's a clean decapitation of companies whose model went bad years ago. And in the second half, we're going to be continuing our conversation with the chairman, CEO of Paymium, Pierre, and getting into it even more spectacularly. Don't go away. Stay right there. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to return to our conversation with Pierre Noizat. He's CEO and founder of Paymium, longest running Bitcoin exchange in Europe, for sure. Pierre, welcome. All right, now let's pick it up where we left off. We're talking about the avalanche-like collapse of the fiat world and how avalanches are not unexpected in systems, global systems. And your Twitter bio reads, Bitcoin as proof money to end the monopoly of debt money. Okay, explain what this means.
Well, debt money is the opposite of proof money because it's promise. It's a promise of future energy, and as such, there is a temptation to print more of it every year, and that's what we observe. That's what we can witness. And Bitcoin is a proof money, so it can be gamed, it can be faked, it can be printed at will, and as a result, it's monetizing past energy, and therefore we are not. There is no oligarchy that will preempt the energy, the future energy of the borrowers. And the borrowers are it's you and I, it's the people. So people, when there is a monopoly of debt money, what people, these oligarchs that run debt money system, they will just take control of people's lives because they will just monetize their energy for the rest of their lives. And that's exactly what we can witness. And Bitcoin is a game changer. Bitcoin will pull the rug under their feet, and it will end their monopoly de facto, not perhaps de jure in the law. It's not yet acted as such, but the monopoly is dead. I've said that many times, even to bankers, that they're having their Kodak moment. You know,
their blockbuster moment, the Kodak moment.
Yeah.
They're being disintermediated.
Exactly.
Does this apply both all the way up to the central banks and the Bank of International Settlements even?
Yeah, it's a network. It's a network, and the master node is the central bank, and there are intermediary nodes, but basically it's a network. It's a network using an obsolete technology.
When Christine Lagarde referred to Bitcoin as the escape hatch, did she understand the irony in what she was saying and that this is the best thing about it?
I'm not sure she understands the irony.
Now let's talk politics for a second, because France, like other countries around the world, is involved in a highly politicized system with the Gilets jaunes, and you have the unrest here and around the world. Of course, France is no stranger to revolutions, and back then they called the guillotine the national razor, is what they called the guillotine. Some would call Bitcoin the global razor, but it is a peaceful revolution from the monetary terror that goes on. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, it's a form of terror. It's a dictatorship, because they have taken over the political power. Have been taken from the hands of the politicians, and now it's all run from the banks, because the banks finance not only the elections but also the delivery of the promises made during the elections. So basically, we're in a system where all the money is discretionary, created by it's created at the discretion of the bankers, that in turn will select the candidates. So when we vote at the election, it's not the first or the second round of election, it's probably the third or fourth or fifth. They have made the selection well upstream, and all the candidates are already under their control. So there is no. That's why I'm not interested in politics. I think we have first to have end the monopoly. So we have different options as money, and money is the first ballot. It's where you really express your preference with money. And after that, you can have elections. But if you don't have this choice of the money you're using, there is no free election.
Fix the money, fix the world.
Exactly. Fix the democracy. Fix the democracy.
A little rusty on my French history, but didn't France already try something under the assignat?
France did. Germany did also using some scheme that the central bank of Hitler made a scheme so they could circumvent the rules.
See, some can't blame America, because we've never had hyperinflation like this. But in Europe, this has happened many times. So I mean, why are Europeans falling for the same trick again? Pierre, what's wrong with Europeans? Do they have amnesia?
Yes, I think it's all about education. That's why you're doing this show, and I'm speaking here in Europe as often as I can. We are few voices like yourself and a few others around the world that are spreading the word, but. The banking lobby is so powerful that people are under some kind of anesthesia. They're just asleep.
Well, one of the memes that has been popular this past year is money printer go brrr. It's a powerful meme. It went viral. Governments and central banks printing trillions. How important are memes to communicating the need for Bitcoin? Because that's a universal language, isn't it?
It is, and it's a way to counter this propaganda that's ubiquitous because all the banks own all the media. Basically, when you see the ownership of the media in Europe, at least, it's all banks, and a few billionaires that are in fact part of the banking system because they are financed by the banks. So it's difficult to use the same tools as they are, and memes play a good role in enlightening people.
Yeah, that's really remarkable. It's what memes have done to really change the political landscape, and now with Bitcoin, the monetary landscape. Now, a couple of countries, the message has been received. El Salvador is hyper-Bitcoinized. They've made Bitcoin legal tender. They've actually now opening up their entrepreneurial doors to people to come in and get great tax treatment for Bitcoin, become a resident for 3 Bitcoin. Ukraine is also now hyper-Bitcoinizing. So will Europe and the US be the last to adopt Bitcoin?
The US is more advanced than Europe, I think, because they have you have big platforms like the ones we talked about, Coinbase, Kraken, and etc. In Europe, it's more fragmented, and therefore it's easier for the central bankers to control what's going on.
So Coinbase and Kraken are essentially competitors of Paymium.
Yes, they are in the US. In Europe, we can be eventually we'll become the leaders in Europe. But for now, they are really global companies, and Europeans have failed to create local champions.
Right, and is that simply just as a protection of the legacy system?
Yeah, it's protection that's working well in Europe because, as I said, the political power is fragmented, so it's even easier for central bankers to control politicians because they are just local leaders, and they are working under the constraints of lots of treaties. Whereas in the US, there is a more centralized power, political power, so that's somewhat perhaps more independent because more powerful.
Because I remember a few years ago, a very famous footballer here in France suggested to boycott the banks and pull your money out of the banks.
Yeah, that's naive because it's not about pulling the money out of the bank because as long as there is a monopoly, you are stuck and you are forced to have a bank account.
But so Bitcoin is the true protest.
Bitcoin is the true solution. It's not pulling the money out of the bank. It's using Bitcoin instead of the fiat money.
So it is kind of the national razor. I mean, we get back to the same idea. It is ultimately a political act. And in Europe, there's no stranger to engaging in open political discussion. This is one thing that in the US, in America, it's known to being a bit politically naive. There's not great discussion about politics, We've had the empire now for many decades. And in Europe, though, politics is the daily conversation. And Bitcoin, I would think, would take up spectacularly well here. Finally, let's talk about as entropy sets in, you've discussed the fractal nature of these things. Where do you expect to see the signs of decay and disintegration? So getting back to the engineering side of things, this idea of fractals and everything is essentially a subset of everything else, and you see the repetition and things happening over and over again. So we're going to go back into the rabbit hole, Pierre. I'm a little leery of this because already we found out that we were floating, we're not here, and gold doesn't exist either. But okay.
It exists, but you can't touch it.
We established this. So let's talk about fractals. Oh my God, I'm getting the vapors already. How does that fit into the view?
No, it just helps understand that the laws of thermodynamics are applying at every level, at microscopic level and macroscopic level, going up all the way up to the universe. And again, the idea is that the maximum entropy production law, the third law of thermodynamics, applies to all these systems. To Bitcoin, for instance, that's also an open system, and in the case of Bitcoin, it's about the energy flowing through it. It's the hash rate. So you reduce the entropy of the system. So when you look at Bitcoin, the more hash rate, the more stable, the less entropy there is in it for you as an observer of the system. That helps understand why it's important to monetize energy with Bitcoin as an alternative solution to the traditional money. As I said, that's promise. So there is lots of uncertainty about the future. So you can't reduce the entropy of that system. So as you said, it's the fiat system is ignoring entropy in a way, whereas Bitcoin is really applying the laws of thermodynamics to the monetary system. So it's bringing the benefits of a system that's consistent with the general law of nature, which is
natural order, natural law.
Exactly.
This is what.
Whereas fiat money is totally artificial. You need a legal system, for instance, to make it work, and that legal system can be gamed, and can be there is regulatory capture. All these are artifacts because well, it's not using the same way as Bitcoin under the laws of thermodynamics.
What if I said fiat money monetizes war, Bitcoin monetizes peace? Your thoughts?
Exactly, because since you are monetizing future energy, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. It can be war, it can be peace. But if it's war, in either case, the oligarchs will win because they will create more money and get more profit from war. Whereas if it's Bitcoin, you just can't finance war. You just don't have the resources to finance it.
It's unconfiscatable.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to go to war if I can't take your property.
Exactly. But that's the advantage over gold, because it's not physical. You can't really easily put your hands on it and go for a physical attack on some enemy. So you can't finance war with Bitcoin because you can't print it, and you can't capture it in a vault like gold. So there is much less incentive and means to launch a war with.
We have about 10 seconds left. Any billionaires in France getting into Bitcoin? I see the world's richest man is LVMH. So they're still basing their billionaire on perfume. It's still about perfume.
Well, there is Xavier Niel, who is a shareholder of in Bitpemium, by the way.
Okay.
He's a billionaire in the telecom industry.
He smart guy. He must know Michael Saylor.
He's the smartest billionaire in France.
Fine. Well, Pierre, thanks for being on Keiser Report.
Thanks, Max.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Pierre Noizat. He's the CEO and founder of Paymium. Until next time, bye, y'all.